competition from the United States of America through trade agreements that undermine our export interests, demand maximum concessions, and openly aim to weaken and subordinate Europe, combined with an endless accumulation of new tariffs that are fundamentally unacceptable. And competition from China, where massive excess capacities or distortive practices threaten to overwhelm entire industrial and commercial sectors. And this is also because of those principles that we have decided to join the mutual exercise in Greenland. China is welcome, but what we need is more Chinese foreign direct investment in Europe in some key sectors to contribute to our growth, to transfer some technologies, and not just to export towards Europe. Your Majesties, distinguished heads of state and governments, President Lagarde, ministers, ambassadors, business leaders, ladies and gentlemen. I'm extremely happy to be here, and it's great to be here, as the Financial Times would say. And it's a time of peace, stability, and predictability. So let's try to address the key challenge of this world in a few minutes' time. But it's clear that we are reaching a time of instability, of imbalances, both from the security and defense point of view and the economic point of view. Look at the situation where we are. I mean, a shift towards autocracy against democracy, more violence, more than 60 wars in 2024, an absolute record, even if I understood a few of them were fixed. And conflict has become normalized, hybrid, expanding into new domains, space, digital, information, cyber, trade, and so on. It's as well a shift towards a world without rules, where international law is trampled underfoot, and where the only law that seems to matter is that of the strongest, and imperial ambitions are resurfacing. Obviously, the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, which will enter into its fourth year next month, and conflicts continue in the Middle East and across Africa. This is as well a shift towards a world without effective collective governance, and where multilateralism is weakened by powers that obstruct it or turn away from it, and rules are undermined. And I can multiply the examples of international bodies weakened or left by the key economies. And when we look at the situation, it's clearly a very concerning time, because we are killing the structure where we can fix the situation and the common challenges we have. Without collective governance, cooperation gives way to relentless competition. Competition from the United States of America through trade agreements that undermine our export interests, demand maximum concessions, and openly aim to weaken and subordinate Europe, combined with an endless accumulation of new tariffs that are fundamentally unacceptable, even more so when they are used as leverage against territorial sovereignty. And competition from China, where massive excess capacities or distortive practices threaten to overwhelm entire industrial and commercial sectors. Export control has become more dangerous new tools, destabilizing global trade and the international system. Obviously, France and Europe are attached to national sovereignty and independence, to the United Nations and to its charter. And it's not an old-fashioned way to live multilateralism. It's just not to totally forget what we learned from the Second World War and remain committed to cooperation. And this is also because of those principles that we have decided to join the mutual exercise in Greenland without threatening anyone, but just supporting an ally and another European country, Denmark. Facing this order and this new situation, this year France holds the G7 presidency with a clear ambition to restore the G7 as a forum for frank dialogue among major economies and for collective and cooperative solutions. trade wars, protectionist escalation. And if we look at the situation, the current imbalances are due to some key phenomena, and we all have to deliver our own agenda. This includes American overconsumption, Chinese underconsumption and overinvestment, and European underinvestment and lack of competitiveness. Because the diagnosis is well known, European competitiveness still lags behind that of the US, and in the current global order, facing precisely the Chinese approach, we have to react. So first, protection. Protection doesn't mean protectionism. But today's Europeans are too naive. This is the unique market open to everybody without checking level playing field. Nobody can access the Chinese market as people are accessing the European market for sure. But even if you take the US and a lot of other countries, the level of protection does exist for investment and trade. And the Europeans are the only one not to protect their own companies and their own markets when the other countries doesn't respect level playing field. China is welcome, but what we need is more Chinese foreign direct investment in Europe in some key sectors to contribute to our growth, to transfer some technologies, and not just to export towards Europe some devices or products which sometimes don't have the same standards or are much more subsidized as the one being produced in Europe. And in parallel, protecting our economies will also require a resilient strategy on both imports and exports to de-risk supply chains, particularly for raw materials, rare earths, semiconductors, chips, and to diversify our trade partners. We have to invest much more. If there is a GDP per capita so different between the US and Europe, 65% to 70% of the explanation is due to the difference in terms of innovation. And the US was much more innovative because of public and private investment. So in our budget for the months to come, because we will negotiate during the years, this year in Europe, we have to invest much more money in the critical sectors where the innovation will be made. AI, quantum, green tech, but as well defense and security. The size of our common budget is not the right one. We have to invest much more money in order to be much more credible and accelerate this innovation agenda.